ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
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 ತಿರುಪತಿ ರೂಪ ಗೋವಿಂದ ತಿರುಮಲ ವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ತಿರುಮಲವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಪುಂಡರೀಕಾಕ್ಷ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಪಂಡರಿನಾಥ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಪಂಡರಿನಾಥ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಭಕ್ತವತ್ಸಲ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಭಾಗವತ ಪ್ರಿಯ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಭಾಗವತ ಪ್ರಿಯ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ವೆಂಕಟರಮಣ ಗೋವಿಂದ
ವೆಂಕಟರಮಣ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಸಂಕಟಹರಣ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಸಂಕಟಹರಣ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ತಿರುಪತಿ ರೂಪ ಗೋವಿಂದ
ತಿರುಪತಿ ರೂಪ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ತಿರುಮಲ ವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ತಿರುಮಲವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
ಶ್ರೀನಿವಾಸ ಗೋವಿಂದ ಶ್ರೀ ವೆಂಕಟೇಶ ಗೋವಿಂದ.
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 Yesterday's question first. Hiranyagarbha. What is Hiranyagarbha? As an individual, you have got this body which is visible, and this body is called gross body. In Sanskrit it is called Sthula Shariram. But behind this Sthula Shariram, gross body, there is another body which is called Sukshma Shariram, subtle body. And subtle body has got 17 parts. 5 organs of action, hands, legs, etc. 5 organs of perception, eyes, ears, etc. 5 pranas, prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. So, pancha prana. And mana, buddhi. and sometimes two more are added, Chitta Ahankara. These 17 or 19 factors constitute your subtle body. So the eyes which you are seeing, this is not the faculty of seeing. That is not the organ of seeing. You are seeing only physical counterpart. Organ of seeing nobody sees. Even doctor doesn't see. Organ of seeing is not available for seeing. That is a subtle. Subtle is that which is not available for perception. So subtle body is not available for perception. Therefore don't say, Swamiji, please show me subtle body. Subtle definition is that which is not available for sense perception is subtle. And therefore this subtle body is there with every individual. Is it there in a plant? Yes. How many subtle bodies are there? Billions and billions and billions. Trillions in fact. Even in this ashram, how many ants do you think will be there? Millions and billions ants will be there. Insects, Therefore, so many subtle bodies are there. And all subtle bodies put together is called Sukshma Prapancha, is called the subtle universe. And the one who is identified with the subtle universe is called Hiranyagarbha. Like you as an individual are identified with your subtle body. Therefore you say, I am thinking, I am upset, I am very happy. So you are identified with it. Similarly, one who is identified with the entire subtle universe, Sukshma Prapancha, is called Hiranyagarbha. So Hiranyagarbha is the one conscious being identified with the entire subtle universe. Okay, that is the answer. Is it different from Virat? Yes. Hiranyagarbha is the one who is identified with the subtle. And the one who is identified with the gross universe is called Virat. Just as at individual level, you when looked upon as identified with gross body, you are called Vishwa. Vishwa. And when you are identified with your subtle body, you are called Tejasa. So corresponding totality of Vishwa is Virat. Corresponding of this Tejasa at cosmic level is called Hiranyagarbha. Alright, so that is the answer to the Hiranyagarbha. Now, let me open this. So many questions are there. Last day, no? So, paisa vasool. How can we ensure that our prayer is more powerful than an obstacle? In Sanskrit it is called phala bala kalpya. Means there is a huge table and table has got inertia. You know that physics you have studied inertia. And to work against inertia you have to push. So table will offer resistance because of inertia and you will be having pushing. Now your pushing is more powerful than inertia. How do you know? If table moves, then you know that your pushing power is more than the inertia of the table. If it doesn't move, to the extent you wanted it to move, then what do you understand? हमारे बस की बात नहीं है. It is not under my control. Your pushing power is less than the obstacle. Is it clear? Similarly, you offer prayer and desired result did not come. So you understand what? My effort was less than it. But don't consider that your prayer has gone waste. Prayer has done. Your table, your mood, it has created some impact. in the language of physics, some power transfer has happened. At subtle level, some changes happen, but you could not see. Some very subtle movement might have happened which is immeasurable to your eyes. So, prayers have not gone waste, but prayers were not good enough to remove the obstacle and bring the desired result. In fact, because of prayer, you will have the trouble, but you will have somebody to help you in trouble. Like somebody, because of this obstacle, he gets disease. But because of prayer, he gets some medical help also. I always tell these people, see, you are seeing that Bhagavan sent me disease. But why don't you see that Bhagavan gave you the power to buy medicine also? There are many people who have a disease and no power to buy medicine. You see that also. We see only one part, that Bhagavan gave me this, Bhagavan gave me this. But Bhagavan gave you a good wife to support you in your health issues, health condition. That you don't see. See, both you see. Then your ability to handle this situation will be better. In every situation you see the help available. The resource is available to handle the situation. And one resource is always available, and that is prayer. So you are really never completely helpless. You always have some resource. But sometimes what happens? You don't use the resource. Many people are very arrogant, no? They say, I will not ask for help. They will suffer but not ask for help. So we are like that sometimes. Helpline is available. Use it. So that is intelligent way of living, which Swamiji used to say very nicely. He said, when you are helpless, asking for help is an intelligent way of living. When you are helpless, ask for help. See, women have understood this principle better than men. I have seen they have less inhibition in asking for help. Man will not ask, I will not ask. You will driving. So my wife is telling you, ask somebody, you are lost. No, I know. You will go 5 kilometers and then come back. Wife will say, what do we lose in asking? She is intelligent. But man has this, I will not ask. Man has this problem. I have seen. They don't ask for help. Most of the time people come for guidance are women only. The men they will, oh no, why should I go to Swamiji? No. I will handle. Suffer. So I have learned from women. I really learned. Therefore I have got some features of women. I ask for help. I have understood. It is an intelligent way. So when you need help, ask for help without putting other into difficulties. When other person is ready to help and it doesn't matter so much to that person, ask for help. Yes, you don't take advantage of other person's goodness and taking help, keep on taking help. If I myself can take this thing, I should not call Srinivas that you give me this. This is advantage, exploitation. But when it doesn't matter to him, that person is ready to do something and you need it, not for the heck of it, ask for help. But don't become dependent on a single source for help. And your principle is to take minimum help. But because of your ego, you don't ask for help and keep on suffering. That is not a good step. Ask for help. Especially help from Ishvara. Ask. That is intelligent. Especially guidance you need. Ask for guidance. And in fact, in India, people are very happy to give advice. One good thing in India is that, people even, they themselves have a problem, but if you ask for the solution, they will give. They themselves have a problem, but they are ready to give solution. People are very generous in giving advice. So, ask for advice. In fact, when I conduct the meetings, generally I ask this all management staff, I ask, what do you feel? So, I don't have to break my head. Let me start from that point where they have reached. Why should I struggle from the task point 0? No, I don't start. I ask them first. Ask for help. When you need help, you ask for help. Anyway, so ask for help, and if it doesn't come, And if you ask for help, offer prayer, and it didn't reach, still keep on praying. Prayer is in your hand. And it will never go waste. Bhagavan has given promise. Nahi kalyana krit kasyit durgatim tata gacchati. In the 6th chapter, Bhagavan says, anything which is done in good manner, anything which is done good, never goes waste. Whatever good, even a small act you have done, in Bhagavan's computer it is registered. Bhagavan has got one computer called Parama. Have you known that Param computer? Param, that supercomputer made, it's called Param. Now they must have been, next generation must have come. But earlier it was Param. It's a nice name, I like it. Param? There was one computer called Param. So Bhagavan has got Paramatma means Param computer. So in that it is registered. So we keep praying and keep asking for help. It's a very intelligent way of living. Keep asking. Alright. Never get frustrated. Just today you see in the ashram we had so many challenges. So many places power failure where that electricity connection went so many places. Still we keep doing what is to be done. One UPS become martyr, second UPS, third keep on doing. Keep doing. This internet also got burned. We called person. Can you help? Because we want to do live stream tomorrow. That person said you sent picture and so we did. Focus on doing rather than feeling helpless. That will keep you sane. People go crazy in crisis because they got so much overwhelmed by the problem. They should focus on the solution. Something is there to be done. To do it. It is not guaranteed that it will work. But at least you are doing. When you focus on doing, your sense of helplessness will be reduced. We have seen this. And prayer is the source available. Keep using as and when required. Along with prayers, you make necessary efforts. That is the way you handle situations. In everybody's life, there will be challenges, different challenges. Grihasthas have got one type of challenges, sannyasis have different types of challenges. Not that sannyasis are free from challenges, they have different types of challenges. So we use resources available. Alright, so answering that question, based on the outcome, we know whether our power of prayer was more or less compared to the obstacle. So why do we use predominantly yellow and red color among the colors for auspicious? I think yellow and red are connected with this, the turmeric and the kumkum. That seems to be the answer coming to me. I have not thought over it, but when I read this, that came to my mind. Therefore, it must be connected with. In Shastra, we talk about 3 gunas. And these 3 gunas sometimes presented by 3 colors. Sattva guna is presented by white, Rajo guna by red, and Tamo guna by black. So this is how connection is there. So they must have been, our acharyas, our shastrakaras must have seen the connection. What spiritual properties does the elements use to make yellow and red color have? The spiritual properties we don't say, but as I said, these 3 colors, white, red and this black, they are connected with these 3 gunas. So if you wear white, you feel really good. Seeing white also invokes that sattvika. It invokes this, what is called, the calmness, brightness, clarity. Therefore, the Saraswati wears white, Shweta Vastra. And in our ashram also, when we conduct the course, we suggest, last time we had made dress code as white. But we have decided to at least suggest, some people may have difficulties, so white is the color these students, they of the course, they will wear. It's a good color for study and all this. Because it's supposed to invoke this calmness. Red is considered to be rajas, when you see red, it brings some activity as it must have been observed by some. Alright. And darkness is lethargy little bit, So When darkness means you sleep. So that's why during meditation we switch off lights. So in case you doze off also, no problem. Nobody will observe it. And one thing I can tell you, I keep my eyes closed. So therefore you don't have to have fear that Swamiji is watching me. So I was to apply for the course and Swamiji is watching. I am sleeping up, so he will not select me. Don't worry, my eyes are closed. Okay, so you can be. Why I am telling this? Because when I was in your position, I used to have this concern that I am dozing off whether Swamiji is seeing or not. Honestly, I had this. In fact, I had gone to that extent to ask this one who was handling the audio system. I asked that, what Swamiji is keeping eyes closed or open? He said, no, closed. I'm just telling all secrets. So, okay. But that's why I'm telling. By chance, you may have this question. So I'm telling that I'm keeping my eyes closed. So you can happily sleep, no problem. Okay. What all these life forms represent God? Why do we have certain animals like cow, Nandi, or gods like eagle and peacock, etc. for example? In fact, all forms, many forms are used. Those who are popular, they are presented in Purana to symbolize certain qualities. This rat is there, so it has got dissection power, it always cuts. So Viveka it represents. Peacock represents the different shades of time. So like different animals represent different qualities. But all forms represent Bhagavan. For us, Ishvara is manifesting in the form of everything, all living beings. Alright. But only as I said, some are specifically connected with some god because of certain qualities the animal represents, or at least attributed to that animal. I think Shani is having the crow, no? Yeah, correct. Yes, it must have some significance. They say crow has got one quality. I did not know, what Swamiji told me. That crow is having this teamwork. That whenever it gets some food, it makes noise. Food is available. Therefore, Shraddha it is offered. Because other birds will eat then and go away. Whereas crow will call others also. It's a good quality, teamwork, Let us eat together. That's a nice thing, So they must having some quality. So maybe Shani will have some connection with that. I am not so much expert in that. I have not paid my attention on that. So, but I have read about a few animals which are the vehicles of some devatas, and they have got certain qualities. We have heard from Puranas that people used to perform penance, yaga, etc. and see God and seek boons, etc. Yesterday in the class you had mentioned that we also can see gods. It seems from above that an individual and God are different. How does that align with the Advaita? See, Advaita, let us understand very well. Advaita means the ultimate reality is one, not followed by the second. Advaita does not mean there is no experience of duality. Now you are seeing me, I am seeing you, duality is there. So at the level of names and forms, the upadhi, there is duality. Only at the level of reality, there is no duality. Like in water, there are waves, foams, whirlpool, wavelets, so many things are there. So at the level of the names and forms, duality is there. But at the level of water, there is no duality. So similarly, at the level of reality, there is no duality, only one reality. But at the level of name and form, there is duality. And when we say that some people, they did tapas and they see God. So God, what they saw, it is at the level of name and form. The one who saw and that which was seen, both of them are at the level of names and forms. And at the level of names and forms, there is duality. So, experience of duality is not against this non-dual reality. So, non-dual reality is not contradicted by the experience of duality. So, we are not talking about non-duality in the absence of the experience of duality. We say reality is non-dual in spite of experience of duality. That is the non-duality. At Paramarthika level, at the level of the absolute reality, there is non-duality. There is only one reality, not followed by the second. That is what we mean by that. Okay. Can we please explain in simple language term, the meaning of Brahman and what is Brahma Jnana? See, whole topic is that only Vedanta. Still I will explain. Brahman means big. How much big? Limitlessly big. So, word Brahman conveys the idea of limitless reality. So, what is Brahman? Reality, the truth of everything which is limitless. So, limitless truth of everything is Brahman. Alright. What is Brahma Jnanam? Knowing that limitless reality is myself is Brahma Jnanam. I am limitless Brahma. That is called Brahma Jnanam. The Brahman is limitless reality, the truth of everything, and that Brahman I am. That is called Brahma Jnanam. This is in simple language. Okay, then what is relative purity? Relative purity means the purity which is necessary to understand and assimilate the knowledge that I am absolutely pure. To understand how I am absolutely pure and assimilate, get convinced of this understanding. For that you require some purity. So, the purity of the mind required for understanding, conviction and assimilation of the fact that I am absolutely pure. That is called relative purity. The person who is full of ragadveshas, the person who is having a lot of restlessness, that person will not understand, will not have conviction and will not have assimilation of this understanding. I am absolutely pure. Even though he is bombarded with this recording, you are pure, you are pure, you are pure. It will not come. So one requires some purity of the mind in terms of reduction of likes and dislikes, some mastery over the organs, some focus. That is called relative purity, which will help you to own up your absolute purity. Alright. In fact, that is the case from all other angles. If you have got relative shanti, then only you can appreciate, have conviction and assimilation that I am Shanta Swarupa. A person whose mind is disturbed, he or she cannot appreciate or have conviction or assimilation of this fact, I am Shanta. Even though he is repeating Shantom, Shantom, like Shri Ram, Jai Ram, Jai Jai Ram, you write, similarly you write, it will not help. So your mind should be relatively Shantaha to appreciate absolute Shantaha. You need to have relative self-acceptance to have the complete self-acceptance, which is moksha. Everything is like that. A person should have relative wholeness to appreciate I am the absolute whole. Wholeness means some integrity. Then only if person is split, then he cannot appreciate I am the whole. So this is true at every level. From different aspects we can see this fact that relative is required to own up the absolute. Alright. When we say Ishvara glories is my glory, how can we differentiate the statement from being egoistic? Is there ego? No. When I say that Ishvara's glory is my glory, I am not seeing myself to be superior to anyone, because I am seeing everybody as Ishvara. Brahmagnani is not seeing that I am Brahmagnani, all are idiots. Brahmagnani sees that I am Brahman and everybody is Brahman. There is no comparison, there is no complex, there is no superiority. I am Brahman, all are idiots. That is not his vision. If he has this vision, he is not a Brahmagnani. Brahmagnani looks upon himself and everything as Brahman. So this wise person looks upon all glories of Ishvara as his glories and everyone as Ishvara. Everyone is myself only. Where is the question of ego? Ego is always with reference to someone. Ego implies what? Superiority. There is no superiority. I alone am in the form of everyone. Where is the comparison? Where is the complex superiority? There is no ego. In fact, there is a complete annihilation of ego. Complete destruction of ego. When I say I am Ishvara means what? Ishvara alone is available as I am. That's what it means. Therefore, in Brahmajnanam alone, there is a complete surrender of ego. In all other forms of bhakti, you somehow retain your ego. And therefore, there is no question of ego. If you feel that, oh, I am Ishvara and all of them are, poor fellows, then your understanding is not correct. Alright. Is there ego? Is there ego? No. Can there be spiritual ego when one says it? No. It will be spiritual ego when he is seeing that I am Ishvara and my fellow beings are left behind. Both of us started together, but I excelled and he was left behind. If he thinks like that, then he has got ego. See, I am Ishvara, I became Ishvara, and this fellow is still struggling. Then it is spiritual ego. In Vedantic understanding, there is no place for individual ego. The individual ego is negated in the wake of knowledge. Ego has no place. Ego is understood to be mithya. It is really not there. It was appearing to be there. It doesn't have any reality. Therefore, if somebody has got some superiority based on his spiritual understanding, he has not really understood the truth. And the real spiritual person will be the most humblest person. Because there is no one to have that, there is no comparison. There is no one with reference to whom I can feel superior. Do my hands see those, say my right hand is superior to left hand? No, there is no such thing. Right leg, left leg, my right eye, left eye, both. Both are equal, both are me. So there is no ego at all. If person has got real spiritual wisdom, in the name of spiritual wisdom, some ideas he has, yes, there can be some spiritual ego. If spiritual ego is there, spiritual wisdom is not there. And here what is talked about is the spiritual wisdom of a wise person. Okay. Shanti mantra are two types: general well-being and relevant to pursuit of knowledge. Then told 5 types of Shanti mantras. This comes under first one or second one. I think the 5 times who has asked this question?
I got later on. I think it's 5 parts, right?
What are the 5 parts you are referring to? What?
No, you told 2 types are there.
So then?
You told about 5, so I got a confusion. What was that?
What are the 5 types you understood? You tell me. I also was wondering.
One is the devotion towards the goddess.
Huh?
Devotion towards the goddess.
Then? Okay, that is one. Then? Second? Did I say 5 types of Shanti Path?
5 parts in each one. 5 parts. I believe
Huh?
5 parts, right?
5 parts in one.
Yeah, I misunderstood. That's why.
Okay, no problem. I talked about three, four types of Shanti. I did not give number 1, 2, 3, 4, but I said, there can be a Shanti Patha in the form of Ishvara Stuti, Ishvara Namaskara, Ishvara Prarthana, and Tattva Smarana. It becomes 4. So I was scratching my head, said there were 5 when I told. Then I said, okay, Ishvara and Guru separated. Somehow I tried to manage. But anyway, let me answer this question. These two divisions are from different angles. We cannot put like this, 2 types are like this, even though we consider this division of 4 types of Shanti Patha, or 4 types of Shanti Patha, or 4 parts of Shanti Patha, we correspond with one with the other. It is something like I gave you division of these people of India, the citizens of India, divided into 3, male, female, and in between gender. And another division, non-graduate, graduate, postgraduate. Now can you say, Swamiji, that can you correspond with this? Can you correspond with this first division with the second? Can you do it? You cannot do it. You cannot say that all male are graduates or female are non-graduate and in between are postgraduate. Can you do like this? You cannot. Because the criteria are different. Anyway, but still I want to answer, even though it is non-answerable, but still I will answer. And that is, Tattva Smaranatmaka, 4 types of Shanti Patha I had said. One is Ishvara Stuti Rupa, then Ishvara Namaskara, Ishvara Prarthana, and Tattva Smaranatmaka. The first 3 can be in general and it can be specific. Means specific in the context of this self-knowledge. But the last one, Tattva Smaranatmaka, will be always in the context of Vidya. Because Tattva Smaranatmaka is not used for the general well-being. We generally use it for this Vidya Prapti only. So that way we can answer. Okay, this one question is that little long question about this. Who has asked this question? Long question. Is that you have asked? You can see me because it is a long and it's very personal. So you can. Are you staying tomorrow?
Yes,
So you can see me afternoon. I will answer this question. You said that seeing God is not moksha. Then what is moksha? That's a great question. So seeing God is not moksha. Then what is moksha? So I heard like this. What is moksha? Alright. So seeing God is not moksha, but understanding that God and me are essentially one, that is moksha. Seeing myself to be one with limitless God is moksha. Means being free from the sense of limitation, being free from the self non-acceptance, that is called moksha. In other words, being one with Ishvara at the level of the true nature, that is moksha. Okay. So seeing God is, when you are seeing God, you are seeing only names and forms of Ishvara. And names and form of Ishvara is not the reality of Ishvara. His true nature, which is Satchidananda, that is the true Ishvara. And being one with the true Ishvara, that is moksha. How to deal with the death of others? In psychology, they talk about 5 steps of bereavement. Have you heard this about these 5 steps? One is denial. Second is anger. Third is bargaining. And fourth is acceptance. I think fourth is bargaining. Third is anger. Now, after the depression. Fourth is depression, and then finally acceptance. There can be some variation in order, but they talk about this. Let us relevant aspect we will deal with. When some very close one dies, then there is generally this feeling of denial. I have seen and heard also that a lady's her son died, or her husband died. Another case, her husband died. Then say that my husband is not dead, my son is not dead. They don't accept. He is there. So denial. They don't want to think about it. They deny that the fact. They don't allow that particular fact to enter into their mind. And therefore we will be surprised that this person's very close one died, and why she is not crying? Why she is like looking normal, doing everything, and we are surprised. So we think that she must have studied Vedanta or something, It's not that. It can be that also, but many a times there is a denial. Nothing has happened. Then denial step is little bit subtle, that anger with God or anger with somebody will happen. You get angry. Say, my son died because of that fellow, or because of doctor, or because of this. Or if nobody you get around, you blame God, get angry with God. And then sometimes this bargain. You tell Bhagavan, if you bring him back, I will never do this thing. I am doing some wrong thing, I will never do that. You bring him back. Bring him, I will bargain. This is called bargaining stage. All these things don't work. Denial also doesn't work, because the fact comes to you again and again. Anger, how long you can be angry? Bargaining also doesn't work. Then depression comes. Means you become very sad. And if you get some help, counseling, some guidance from Swami or something, then slowly acceptance comes. So what I want to highlight is, first of all, accept the fact that I have lost a very significant person in my life. Don't deny the feeling. Don't suppress this feeling. I have lost a very near and dear one. And it makes me sad. It will make anybody sad. You validate yourself. Acknowledge the fact that person is no more, and it is very saddening. It is very painful. To lose this person is very painful. In fact, sometimes you have to go through pain. Some pain you have to go through, and otherwise it will remain suppressed. That's why in Indian culture they make the lady cry. They make the person cry. Somehow they will say, oh, he was such a nice person, this, that, and all this. It is necessary. In some religion you should not cry. It is a very suppressing thinking. Not correct. Person has to go through. And at that time, the people around should never say that don't cry. You should let the person cry. Don't give any advice. Don't bring Vedanta at that time. When person is crying because of loss of near and dear one, I as a Swami who is supposed to be embodiment of Vedanta, I don't talk about Vedanta. I just go to the person, I hold the hand of the person, make the person feel that I am with you. I can understand your pain. I don't give Vedanta at that time. Nainam chinnanti shastrani, vasam chi jirnani, yatha vihaya. All wisdom you should not give that time. The person is not ready at that time. So some people have this, that talk back. So that little bit Vedanta they have heard, so they will give. Don't do that. It is you are harming the person. In fact, you are making that person angry. Don't do that. And that person who is dealing with the anger, he said, yes, my sadness is understandable. It is in order. I was attached to that person, and therefore losing that person will be causing sadness. And, oh Lord, give me the capacity to go through this situation with minimum reaction to others, minimum damage to myself, to bring Ishvara. And if Ishvara, you are not telling you, take away my sadness. No. Give me the capacity to go through this situation. That is a healthy prayer. And spend time with your near and dear ones. Do something which was something very dear to that person. Think about how I can express my gratitude to that person. How can I show my gratitude to that person? By doing something which was very dear to that person. Some cause you find out. And in this manner, you use your mental energy in a constructive manner. That is how you slowly, it will not happen overnight, slowly you get over and you reconcile with the fact. And you learn from that experience that, see, the life is so uncertain, everybody has to die, so let me make use of my life properly. And let me lead this life as a tribute to that person. And in this manner, you convert your sadness into inspiration, into gratitude, into prayers. And be in company of somebody who can understand. Very difficult to get, but if you have, be in company of such people. Company is very, very important in such situation. Yeah, immediately you don't need company, you don't like to be in company. So somebody who doesn't intrude but available. That is a maturity in relationship. You are available but don't intrude. Means you don't push yourself on others, but you are available. Somebody says, get out. Yes, I will go, but tell me when you need, I am available. You ask that person who is sad, no, he said, get out. Yes, I am going, but I am available. That is maturity. That type of mature relatives you have, friends you have, be in company of such people. And as I said, if you need help, ask for help. If you need some company, you need some inspiration, and just to go through this moment along with somebody, take somebody's help and use your time in a more constructive manner, convert into, as I said, sadness into inspiration to do something positive. See, in my case, I have seen that I have somehow prepared myself for death of everybody. I have visualized that if this person dies, yeah, it will be a loss, but I will move on. And therefore, it is like in engineering language, they call it pre-stress concrete. I am a pre-stress concrete. So if you have that guts, you can do that. Means nothing, I don't think about if this person dies, what? There is nobody in my life. In fact, I love my teacher the most. I love him. I really owe a lot. But to the teacher also, once I told this, Swamiji, I have so much love for you, but I don't think that my life will be a vacuum without you. And my Guru said, yes, this is what I want to hear from you. That is a relationship. So that gives you strength. Death is an inevitable fact. There will be definitely some, you will be remembering that person, there will be some loss, you lose a guide, a great guide, all these things are okay. But mentally you prepare. That's a great thing. In every relationship you are ready to let go the person. Then you are free. Like the blind person, when he enters into the house, he always remembers how to get out. He enters, while entering he remembers how to get out. So he remembers, this is the path to get out. Enter into every relationship with the readiness to get out. Means it is not that I will drop relationship, but I do not give importance to any relationship that without that person my life is zero. That is one way of handling, but I don't think everybody can do that. But if you can do it, I find a great freedom in it. It is not that it is now, this has been there, I am perhaps born and brought up with that. Some of my mind is like that. Learn to be independent, as independent as possible. That's why I ended up becoming a Swami. Not fit for marriage. If I get married and if I tell my wife you die, I don't mind. What? So Bhagavan really, that's why he keep me unmarried. Okay. So some people are not designed to get married, so I am one of them. Okay, alright. So I think we have covered all this. Then this question is that will it be possible to share by email Mataji's Shanti Mantra chanting soft copy to students? Yeah, whoever needs that, you can put it on YouTube. Huh? As Amma's recording, you can ask Amma, is she comfortable?
Ammaji already is done. Ammaji said Swamiji okay?
Yeah, you then put it. It will be available on YouTube, Arshi Vidya Gurukulam. Please go and listen to it. Yes. And if somebody still needs, you can tell our Sridivasanji, he will give. Okay, I think all. Okay, yes, still are there. Does God get angry with us? He doesn't get angry. But when we get some unfavorable situation in our life, we may think that he is angry. And sometimes it is presented in that manner also. That, when you violate dharma, then you are going against the instruction of God. And because of that you get suffering. That as if Ishvara is angry. Really he is not angry, because he is Purna. You know what is anger? Anger is an expression of your pain. Especially expression of your inability to handle your pain. You see, whenever you get angry, you cannot be happily angry. Oh, I was so happy getting angry. Anger is associated with pain. And Ishvara doesn't have pain. He is Purna. Therefore, Ishvara doesn't get. If he becomes pain, he gets pain, then where will he go? We will say, oh my God. What he will say? Oh my Jiva or something, he cannot say. So, God, thank God, God doesn't have pain. How to maintain the focus on study Vedanta in daily life after the retreat? First of all, you understand the importance of study of Vedanta. Why should I study Vedanta? You understand the importance. Get convinced of it. Don't do it for heck of it. No, I think Vedanta must be good. So many people were there, they are doing. No, you get convinced. Unless you get convinced of something, you will not have motivation. So understand very well, very intimately you understand. If I don't study Vedanta, so what? Why should I study Vedanta? Get convinced. If you get convinced, and in English they say, a will find a way. So if you get convinced, then you will have desire. Whenever you understand the significance of something, you would like to do it. And when you have a wish to do it, you will find the way. You will somehow find the way. Like you are full, no? You have eaten all sambar, rasam, everything, but ice cream comes, how you get some space for ice cream? No? Because you like it. Similarly, when you have this sense of importance for something, you will always find time. See, we people say generally we don't have time, but when cricket match is there, thousands of people are there. In Narendra Modi Stadium, 110,000 people. If you tell them come for Vedanta class, Swamiji, no time. If I come, we stand outside, no, with the pamphlets of Vedanta classes. You imagine from 1,10,000, how many people will come? Even 100 people will not come. Because the sense of importance is not there. So create first sense of importance. Okay. Then I will take 2-3 minutes more. Why only 15th chapter of Gita is chanted before lunch? Because in the 15th chapter, this Aham Vaishvanaro Bhutva, the shloka is there. And before that also that, what is called, Tattej, or what is called, Pushnami Chaushadhisvarva Somo Bhutva Rasatmakaha. So that shlokas are there. These shlokas are connected with the Anna Dosha Nivrutti. When you remember Chandra and you Chandrama as the nourisher of all the plants which is described there, and you eat food, then the Anna Dosha will not be there. That's where Bhashyakara says that. And therefore it is chanted 15th chapter. If there is any inner meaning that our Devi and Devatas have animals and birds as Vahanas, I think I have explained. This one thing is that there is acceptance of all. Just because they are animals, they are not rejected. They also have got some divinity, acceptability, and that is why also their vehicles are accepted. And as I told you, every vehicle has got some meaning, some message. Like this rat, he stands for Viveka. So like that peacock stands for various shades of time. So Ishvara is riding over all shades of time, means he is not impacted by time. So all these messages can be derived. Why Bhagavata Puranam is well known than remaining 17 Puranas? Because in Bhagavata, all avatars are presented. And the hero of that Bhagavata is Bhagavan Sri Krishna. And Sri Krishna is Prema Swarupa. Ananda, he is expressed Ananda in full fashion. Rama is like, this Vigrahavan Dharma. So he did not have the Ras Leela and all this, so therefore what happened, the people, we love to hear the story of Sri Krishna, which is the expression of Ananda. And also it is Krishna Avatara is, according to some version, is considered to be Purna Avatara. Means all aspects were manifest. And the Krishna stories are very elaborately present. And also this Bhagavata Purana is connected with the higher gati of the Pitrus. Even for releasing the Pitrus from this Bhuta Preta Yoni, also Bhagavata is said to be effective. And people will always feel that my father must have become ghost. So, might have become ghost or somebody. And therefore people want to do that. That way also it became popular. In North India it is popular for that also. So somebody died and then after them, after 1 year or so, they do Bhagavatam. And of course the stories are very interesting. And there is lot of Vedanta, so much Vedanta. Uddhava Gita, so much Vedanta. And very beautifully presented. But the language is very terse language. Bhagavate Vidusham Pariksha. You are a great scholar in Sanskrit, you teach Bhagavatam with Anvaya to the people who know Sanskrit. Your knowledge will be tested. So very, very complicated Anvaya. When I used to teach Bhagavatam in Bangalore, it used to take a lot of time. For other Vedanta class, it doesn't take so much, but this Bhagavata, so much you require, a lot of effort. If you want to teach sincerely, simply story you want to tell, okay, but I used to teach shloka, meaning and all. So it is, that way it has got very great Sahitya, the literary aspect also is very rich. Story content is very rich, presentation is very rich, connected with some religious functions, and therefore it became popular. And it has got so many commentaries. So many, and many acharyas, they wrote commentaries. Sridhara and all. In fact, minimum I think 10-15 commentaries are there. More than that it might be, but at least I have seen that so many commentaries are there. And therefore it became very popular. And it is a very good, it's a nice text to hear. In South India it is not that popular. In North India it is much more popular. Here also popular, not so much. There Bhagavatam will be there in every village, every town, there is Bhagavata Katha will be there every now and then. That's how it is popular. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo